I, Vivian Everett, brutally murdered 10 innocent residents and framed a blind man with a tragic past. In the interrogation room, the officer asked me, "Are you even human?" Human? Of course, I'm not human. I am a god. As I was about to head home after a charity event, I saw 2 of my former colleagues. They walked straight up to me, holding their police badges, and said in a serious and solemn tone, "Miss Everett, you are suspected of poisoning Officer Alan Blake. Now, we are legally requesting you to return to the police station for investigation." I was really scared. I almost thought they had found evidence of me killing those 10 innocent residents. In the interrogation room, the 2 officers who used to be friends with Alan sat opposite me, their eyes full of anger and of course even more shock. And I calm and composed with a smile on my face. "You guys came all the way here just to reminisce with me?" I asked jokingly. Old John slapped the table heavily, making a dull thud, and said, "Officially now, we need to verify your identity. Name Vivian Everett. ID number, place of origin, Austin, Texas. Please confirm if the above information is consistent with your personal information." I nodded and said, "Yes, it is. It is. I am Vivian Everett." The other colleague, Mark, inquired, "May I ask if you were at the entrance of St. Mary's Hospital around 10 o'clock this morning, participating in the charity event Education Changes Destiny, Support Rural Education?" "Yes," I replied curtly. Mark looked at me with some surprise, and I understood what he meant. I explained, "I used to be a cop. I know the procedures of police interrogation. All I need to answer is yes or no, right?" "Sissy, silly, me." Mark was choked by my words and closed his mouth resentfully. Old John continued to ask, "Did you see Captain Alan Blake of the Austin Police Department's Criminal Investigation Unit while you were doing charity work?" "Yes." "You gave him a bottle of mineral water?" "Stervelkoof." "Yes." "Was the water you handed him open?" I frowned thought for a moment and replied, "It was probably open." "We need your accurate answer." I said innocently, "I can't remember clearly. The hospital entrance is a public place. There must be surveillance cameras, but whether they can capture me opening the water bottle is a question." They looked at each other, not knowing what to ask for a moment. I asked curiously, "Captain Blake is poisoned because of the bottle of mineral water I gave him?" Instantly I understood. As expected of the man I've admired for 10 years, his mind is really sharp. Under my step-by-step guidance, he finally realized that the blind man murder case was all orchestrated by me. But he also understood that all the evidence had been cleared, and all the witnesses would never speak. Therefore, he abandoned his professionalism and duty as a policeman and made a big deal out of the bottle of mineral water I gave him. The purpose was to bring me to the interrogation room. How pitiful. As a police officer, he actually broke the law for the sake of bringing the real murderer to justice, and played the trick of framing me. Next time we meet, I must give him a good taunt. "What are you smiling at? She did follow the victims." Suddenly, Mark exploded, perhaps because the smile on my face was too rampant and complacent. Old John immediately pulled his hair, motioning for him to sit down. But Mark and Ellen have such a good relationship. How could he calm down? Captain Blake is still in the ICU ward. The doctor said that if he can't survive for 24 hours, the best outcome is to become a vegetative state. Are you still the victims? Are you still the victim? We know. How could you do such a crazy thing? Don't you admire him? Destroying what you can't have is the usual style of you rich ladies, isn't it? I sighed softly. Mark, as a former colleague, I kindly remind you to pay attention to your words. Otherwise, if I take it seriously, you might lose your job. Who are you threatening? Mark angrily tried to hit me, but fortunately, old John stopped him. Miss Everett, your DNA was detected on the bottle cap. If you don't cooperate with the investigation, you will be the one to suffer. What kind of evidence is this? This can only prove that I opened the bottle cap, but it can prove that I poisoned it. However, I'm a little confused now. In order to bring me here, you broke the law and even risked your own life. The price is too high. I looked directly at them and said, calmly, if you had evidence, you wouldn't be showing me your police badges, but arrest warrants. Since there is no arrest, it means there is no conclusive evidence. According to the regulations, you can only detain me for 24 hours at most. Now, I want to exercise my basic rights as a citizen. I will remain silent until my lawyer arrives. The legal team at Field Associates is absolutely professional. Lucas Field is an undefeated general in the legal profession, with a 10-year winning streak. Before I could say anything, he reminded me in a very clear and organized manner. First, you can remain silent without a lawyer present. Second, you can choose not to answer any questions you don't want to. Third, with me here, you have nothing to worry about. Fourth, before he could finish, I interrupted him cleanly. I called you here to do things for me, not to teach me how to do things, understand? Even such a big shot, who had fought countless criminal cases, at this moment, hearing these words, his eyes flashed with a little fear. I ordered, save Alan's life, at all costs. He is the man I have chosen. His life, everything about him, belongs to me. No one is allowed to take his life without my permission. 24 hours passed quickly. Lucas had taken care of everything, but just as I was about to leave the police station, Mark blocked our way. I took a deep breath and reminded him, Mark, procedurally, you are not supposed to be involved in this case because of your close relationship with Captain Blake. Who can guarantee that you won't bring personal emotions into it? Cather. Who told you that I am investigating the poisoning case of Captain Blake? Mark glanced at me sideways and said angrily, Miss Everett, we suspect you are involved in the murder of 10 innocent citizens, and now please cooperate with the investigation. What? Interesting. Before I could say anything, Mark interrupted me. You used to be a cop. You should cooperate with the police investigation at a time like this. Just like that, I was back in the interrogation room. But this time, they didn't ask me any questions. After an unknown amount of time, they brought me a pair of men's shoes and a mud plate. They wanted to get my footprints to compare with the ones I deliberately left in the sewer that day. I pursed my lips and said, do you think this can be used as evidence? Mark snapped. Shut up. Your responsibility is to cooperate with our investigation, nothing else. I sneered and challenged. Okay, and I'll give you another 24 hours. After that, they didn't ask any more questions, and I waited quietly in the interrogation room, alone, recalling the scene of the murder, wondering if there were any loopholes. However, before I took action, I carefully selected both the people to kill and the scapegoat. The victim must not be a local resident. Firstly, they wouldn't have other family members living with them, making it easier to strike. Secondly, after the incident was over, there would be no relatives to overturn the case, and even if there was an investigation, it would be more difficult due to geographical reasons. The scapegoat must be alone, without any side branches. The case would be completely closed with his death, and no one would ever seek justice for him. The more I thought about it, the more smug I felt. If it wasn't for the clue I deliberately left behind, Alan would never have thought of me. Suddenly, the door creaked open. I looked up and saw Alan standing at the door, wearing a blue and white hospital gown, looking haggard. Damn it. This is not the image of the man I have loved for many years. Half dead. What I love is his youthful and sunny demeanor on the university campus, his righteousness and masculinity, his quick thinking when solving cases, and his courage and bravery when carrying out tasks. He clutched his chest with one hand, struggling to walk in. Mark was worried that he would suffer a disadvantage and wanted to follow him in. He raised his hand, and Mark obediently retreated, considerately closing the door behind him. Immediately, all the equipment in the interrogation room was turned off, leaving only one light on. Alan walked unsteadily to the seat opposite me and said softly, "I want to have a chat with you, not as a policeman, but as an acquaintance." I sighed softly and couldn't help but smile. "Alan, you are too polite. After all these years of knowing each other, as long as you are willing to talk to me, I will tell you everything I know." Alan nodded slightly and asked directly, "Did you kill those people?" I nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I killed them all." I clearly noticed his face changed. At that moment, his hands clenched into fists. If it weren't for his physical condition, I guess he would have punched me hard. Why? He slammed his fists on the table, making a drumming sound. What for? I said flatly, "For you." He looked up at me, his face full of disbelief. I smiled again. I had countless times fantasized about what his expression would be when he learned the truth and confronted me face to face. I have to admit, he did not disappoint me and gave me the reaction I wanted. "Didn't you insist that there is no perfect crime in the world? Didn't you say that as long as a criminal commits a crime, they will definitely leave clues? If it weren't for that footprint, if it weren't for William's last words, 'I recognized you,' if it weren't for the blind glasses advertisement posted on the hospital wall, would you have imagined that the real murderer you have been painstakingly searching for is so close to you?" Alan shook his head. "No, you are definitely not the kind of person who would ruin your own life for a man." I nodded and praised. "Although you don't love me, you seem to know me well." I, Wafian Everleigh, the dignified daughter of the Every family, sitting on billions of dollars in assets, can get anything I want with a wave of my hand. A man of your caliber, if I wanted, could fill several auditoriums. Hearing this, he seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Yes, otherwise, those innocent citizens and that poor scapegoat William would have died because of him. How uncomfortable it must be for someone like him, who considers himself to have the noble mission of protecting the people. Just when he relaxed, I added, however, "You, Alan Blake, are the only man who dared to reject me. I hate you, so I want revenge. You made me love in vain, so I want you to live in guilt and self-blame every day and night for the rest of your life." His emotions were out of control, and he began to cough violently. I stood up and looked down at him, condescendingly. "Are you regretting it? If you had known that rejecting me would cause such a big disaster, you wouldn't have said no, would you?" I will never forget that when I was 18 years old, I walked up to him with a large bouquet of roses and said to him shyly, "Alan, I like you. Can you be my boyfriend?" The victims. He didn't even blink and said to me in an icy tone, "No." That feeling, I felt like I was being slapped in public, countless times, my face burning like fire, my heart attacked by a beast. At that moment, I swore that, no matter the cost, I must make Alan my slave and return the pain he inflicted on me 1,000 times over. But he doesn't love me. He never loved me. No matter what I do, he doesn't love me. The more I spoke, the more violently he coughed. I walked over to him and patted him gently on the back, helping him catch his breath. I bent down and brought my lips close to his ear, asking softly, "Alan, if I give you another chance, what would you do?" He pushed me away with all his strength and shouted, "Get away." He was angry, but what he didn't know was that his anger excited me. Every time I kill someone when they're on the verge of death, I would say, "Don't blame me. Blame the man named Alan Blake. Why him? Why did he reject my love? What's wrong with me? You died innocently, and your parents will be miserable in their old age. Your wife and children will be alone. If you can become a vengeful spirit, don't forget to seek revenge from Alan." Alan's coughing sounded like it was mixed with blood, and the chair he was sitting on was shaking. I laughed the kind of creepy laugh that sends chills down your spine. I pressed my hands heavily on the chair he was sitting on. "So tell me, why don't you like me?" "What's wrong with me? Give me one reason why you don't love me." He remained silent, desperately suppressing his emotions. But just as I was at my most excited and satisfied, he actually laughed. That kind of mocking, contemptuous laughter. "Pathetic?" he asked. "You, the dignified daughter of the Everett family, sitting on billions of dollars in assets. What's so great about you? In the end, aren't you just like those ignorant and superficial women? A complete love brain. Only, why don't you love me?" He shook his head with a smile, looked up, and asked me directly, "I also want to know, why should I love you?" "Money. There are countless women in this world who are richer than you. Looks. Are you the most beautiful woman in the world? Besides these two, do you have anything else to be proud of?" He pointed to my heart and asked a vein in his heart. "She did," followed the victims. I admit, I was pissed off. However, I couldn't show it. I turned away, adjusting my breathing, refusing to meet his gaze. I bit my lip, took a deep breath, and returned to my seat. "Love brain, you underestimate me," I said. "Yes, everything I have is given to me by my father, but do you know who my father is?" He should know. After all, who wouldn't know the chairman of the Over Corporation? My father, Charles Everett, started from scratch and became a business tycoon in Austin in just 5 years. From food to medicine, from department stores to real estate, from cars to electronics, there is no business he can't do. I've known since I was a child that there's no such thing as a free lunch. How could I be so crazy for a man? "Scanwolnagan," I said, "you're not worthy of my madness." His emotions calmed down a bit, and he guessed, "Is it for the blind smart glasses?" As expected of the man I admire, I looked at him and praised. "That's right, so William is my target. Everyone else is just collateral damage." I deliberately asked, "You know about William, right?" "That man, he's really pitiful. He's the same age as us. Do you remember? He's the track and field star that the teacher often praised in class. If only you were half as good as that track and field star, I wouldn't have to worry so much." He didn't seem to remember after all. William was too far away from us back then. To us, his name was simply Track and Field Star. He was like a rising star, destined to be in the spotlight. Unfortunately, he had a car accident just as he was about to reach the peak of his glory, and so he lost everything. He became blind and disappeared from the circle he knew. From then on, he began his dark life. Alan panicked slightly. "Don't tell me that your company developed the blind smart glasses because of him." "There's a certain causal relationship, but it's not clear which is the cause and which is the effect," I explained. "The light is so good, how can we tolerate someone losing it?" I sighed helplessly. "Unfortunately, how can we make the product better? If a blind man could kill someone wearing these glasses and not be discovered by the police, then this thing must be a success, right?" Alan closed his eyes and asked, unbearably, "You let William wear that thing, it'd kill people?" I thought for a moment and asked curiously, "Cool, isn't it?" Looking at his gritted teeth, I grinned and let out a few chuckles. I didn't do that. I just practiced with his guide dog beforehand. First I caught that dog. I deliberately paused. No, William called her Lucky. Every time he called Lucky, it was like he was calling his own child. So affectionate. I caught Lucky first, dug out her eyes, cut off her tongue, broke her legs, burned her with a lit cigarette, and even cut open her belly alive with a knife. Finally, I poured gasoline on her and set her on fire. She immediately became like a flying fireball, limping out, and finally fell into that ditch. So tragic. The more I spoke, the more excited I became, and the ugly Alan's face became. I reminded him, "Oh, by the way, all of this was done in the absence of light. Have you guessed the crime scene yet?" "Well, yes, that's right. It's the sewer where you found the 10th person. There's an old iron fence door there. As long as someone opens the door, the mechanism will be triggered, and the little spark I left there will land on the person doused in gasoline. And then You should still remember the next scene vividly, right? This time Alan couldn't hold back. He raised his hand to hit me. Unfortunately, he was still too weak at the moment. I grabbed his wrist tightly, and he didn't even have the strength to struggle. Alan, I have to thank you for this too. If it wasn't for following in your footsteps, how could I have gone to the police academy? And how could I have learned all these skills? It was you who taught me the skills to kill, and it was also you who taught me the skills of counter-reconnaissance. Alan roared angrily. Crazy. You are a lunatic. I nodded yes, I am a lunatic, but this world wasn't created by lunatics. Darwin's madness created on the origin of species. Einstein's madness brought the world the theory of relativity. Van Gogh's madness gave us the beautiful starry night. Today it is precisely because of the madness of Vivian Everett that the blind people in this world can have light. After hearing my words, Alan's jaw dropped in astonishment. He shook off my hand with all his strength. You killed people. How can you say such shameless words? What did they do wrong? How can you take their lives so cruelly? I said indifferently, there's no shortage of people like them in this world, those who toil at the bottom of the ladder. There are so many people. What does it matter if a few die? Will the earth explode? Will the world be destroyed? She did follow the victims. They are just lowly dust, and I only need to wave my hand gently, and they will be gone. What lower class, upper class, that's life. Life is not distinguished by high or low, noble or lowly. Alan almost used all his strength to shout at me. Life is supreme. All beings are equal. Ha 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 ha. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. What life is supreme. All beings are equal. Then has anyone considered the lab rats? Suddenly, it was as if Alan had been struck by a bolt from the blue. He stared at me with bloodshot eyes, and the last bit of energy in his body was finally drained. He sat down weakly. For a long time, he did not recover. I just stared at him, watching his mental breakdown. The sense of exhilaration in my heart wrapped around me like a snake, every cell in my body reveling in victory. After a long time, Alan slammed his palm on the table and pointed at me and asked, "Are you even human? Taking innocent lives under the guise of salvation, is this something a human should do?" "So, human?" I asked with an innocent and puzzled expression, but uttered the most soul-stirring words. "Of course, I am not human. In your eyes, I am a pervert. I am a murderer. However, in the eyes of some people, I am a god. I am the one who saved them from the darkness." Using the lives of 11 people and a dog, as well as the faith of an excellent police officer, to bring a wonderful and bright life to thousands of blind people in the world, don't you think it's worth it? Nate, E.T., Towen, the victims. At this point, Alan clutched his chest, and a mouthful of bright red blood spurted from his mouth. Fortunately, I dodged quickly, otherwise it would have stained my clothes. I looked at him laughing frantically. "Do you know why you were able to be discharged from the hospital so quickly? A medicine that costs 10,000 a shot is something you wouldn't be able to afford, even if you didn't eat or drink for 10 years. It was me with a casual order that I used it on you. Otherwise, how would you have the opportunity to listen to me say so much here? Tiai. This sentence completely broke him. Even though he was holding onto the table with all his might, he still knelt on one knee. I squatted down, looked at his face with pity, and comforted him. Alan, you don't have to be so angry. The law of the jungle is the survival of the fittest. The more you believe in, the justice you insist on, is vulnerable in the face of capital and power. Alan covered his heart with one hand, his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't figure out what he was thinking. After waiting for a long time, he suddenly laughed. First a soft chuckle, then a loud laugh, and finally a kind of crazy laugh. This kind of rhythmic, emotionally progressive laughter is the easiest to anger people, because you don't know what he's laughing at all. Survival of the fittest. Capital and power. Vivian, since you believe in the law of the jungle, why did you try so hard to destroy the evidence, find someone to take the blame, and painstakingly create a perfect crime? Could it be that you also believe that as long as there is evidence, even the president must be punished equally with the common people? Me? He slowly propped himself up and sat up, saying, calmly and formally, Vivian Everett, you are suspected of murdering 10 innocent citizens and coercing and inducing blind William to take the blame. Now I am legally arresting you. You have the right to remain silent, the right to hire a lawyer, but from this moment on, every word you say will be used as evidence in court. A pair of cold handcuffs silently landed on my wrists, and I didn't react for a moment. You've been a criminal police officer for so many years. You should know that what I just said has no legal effect, right? I said, I can retract my confession at any time. People can lie, they can retract their confessions, but evidence can't. Alan asked. Vivian, are you so confident that you haven't left any evidence? Of course not. Otherwise, how could they wait until now to arrest me? But the truth is, I was indeed arrested. 48 hours after I was detained, I saw Lucas once. He asked me to be honest with him, reminding me that a client should never lie to their lawyer, because if any detail is missed, the case will have a completely different outcome. But how can I tell anyone about this? I could only tell him one definitive answer. Your suspicions are right. So what you need to do now is to send someone to find out what evidence the police have found. Lucas was also silent for a long time after hearing this. I looked at him with disdain. What, haven't you encountered such a horrific case in all the criminal cases you've handled? Ton. Of course. Errol, it's just, he hesitated, then whispered, it's just that I've never seen anyone so provocative to the police, so provocative to the law. Committing a crime is understandable, but after committing a crime, insisting on exposing yourself, it's puzzling. After he finished speaking, he let out a long sigh and apologized. I'm sorry, Miss Everett. I think I need to report this matter to the chairman. This is not a trivial matter. How dare you? I threatened. If you can't even handle this little thing, I think you're not qualified to be the legal counsel of the Everett Corporation either. Lucas ignored me. I understand that once my father finds out about this and gets involved, things will get much more complicated, because the development of the situation is unpredictable. On the 4th day of my detention, Alan finally laid his cards on the table. When I saw him again, he had regained his energy, while I was dejected from being formally arrested. This time, it was Alan and Mark who interrogated me. According to normal procedures, I knew that there would be higher ups outside, monitoring the entire interrogation process. Pinches. Just as his long arms, Alan pushed a braille diary towards me along the table. Vivian, when you touched this braille diary, did you ever think that you would eventually fall on it? To make William look more like the real killer, I specifically added the information of those 10 people to his braille diary. But before that, I had carefully read William's braille, and I deliberately imitated his wording and writing habits. I firmly believed that there could be no loopholes in the writing style. The reason why I didn't let William write it himself was because I was afraid that he would use braille to leave clues that I couldn't understand for the police, and then all my efforts would be wasted. I've never seen this. I don't know William either. The day he turned himself in was the first time I saw him. Alan seemed to have anticipated my thoughts. The day William was shot, you said you used to be the police officer in that area, and you were the one who helped find the body of his guide dog when it died. My mind was stimulated at that time. I was just talking nonsense. You were a police officer. At that time, you should know what your words mean. I hurriedly said, I am willing to take responsibility for the crime of obstructing official duties. Mark glared at me angrily. What, weren't you arrogant that day? Are you scared now? Yeah, William too. During the interrogation, they all wore earphones because the leaders outside would give them orders at any time. I don't know what the people outside said, but Mark immediately restrained his emotions. Alan continued to ask, if I remember correctly, you like to wear perfume. That's my freedom. It is said that there is a kind of imported perfume from France that claims to have a fragrance that lasts for thousands of years. How is that possible? It's just a publicity stunt. Yes, it must be a stunt, but since it is used as a stunt, it must have some special ingredients. The smell of perfume can dissipate, but the ingredients of perfume can leave evidence. I looked at Alan puzzled. He took out a small and exquisite purple perfume bottle and asked me, how do women spray perfume? We, Linnefikin. It seems that Officer Allen is really planning to marry and have children with the case. At such an old age, don't you have any understanding of women at all? Sweet, spray. I deliberately mocked him, but he didn't mind. He picked up the perfume bottle and sprayed it a few times in the air. Some women like to spray perfume like this. Let the perfume naturally fall on the body, so that the fragrance is even and natural. He sprayed the perfume lightly on the inside of his wrist again, and said, some women like to spray the perfume on the inside of their wrists, and then gently rub this part to a certain part, such as behind the ear. He asked, how do you spray perfume? Naturally, the second type. The first one is suitable for innocent little girls, and women who long for love. Know that the fragrance from certain parts of the body can stimulate men's hormones even more. I didn't speak. Alan picked up the pen from Mark's hand, which was used to record, and began to imitate the way Braille was recorded, explaining the force used in writing Braille is different from our normal writing. Do you think Braille writing relies mainly on where to exert force? I couldn't help but frown. I recalled the scene that day when William was sitting next to me. He asked me, why do you know Braille? I can do a lot of things. Even though I knew he couldn't see anything, I was still very cautious. I deliberately wore a voice changer to prevent him from recognizing my identity through my voice. I also deliberately wore height-increasing shoes and tied sandbags to my legs to prevent him from discerning my height and weight through hearing, and thus deducing that I am a woman. But I seem to have overlooked his sense of smell, so I didn't deliberately avoid it when it came to perfume. If I applied the perfume to the inside of my wrist, then when writing Braille, the inside of my wrist would be in contact with the Braille paper the entire time. Even if I was worried about leaving fingerprints, sweat stains, palm prints, etc., and deliberately wore gloves, it still couldn't stop the perfume from permeating. But even so, after such a long time, the smell of the perfume has long since dissipated, even if some ingredients are accidentally left behind. The dose will be too small to be detected. Do you think it's impossible to leave evidence? Alan saw through my thoughts at a glance, but you didn't expect the material of the Braille paper. This special paper just happens to react with this perfume. So after more than half a year, this Braille has suddenly added these rose-red patches. Even so, what does it have to do with me? Alan said, this perfume only sold 50 bottles in the United States. So you think everyone who bought this perfume is a suspect? His perfume is a high-end luxury, limited edition and real name, Miss Everett. Do you think this can be used as evidence? Hearing this, my hands trembled slightly, but I immediately controlled it, pretending to be calm, and asked, this can only prove that my perfume has been in contact with this Braille diary, but it cannot prove that I have been in contact with it. Maybe someone stole my perfume. Maybe I gave it away. Alan immediately closed the Braille diary and asked me, so Miss Everett, who can steal your perfume? Who would you give the perfume to? Now, you need to explain this. I couldn't say anything. I could only say I have the right to remain silent. Alan smiled. Of course you have the right to remain silent, but it doesn't mean that your silence can stop our investigation. Now we have the right to investigate everything about you, including but not limited to your house, car, bank account, company, business dealings, communication records, etc. I really want to know how powerful capital is, and I want to know who has privileges before the law. Lucas came to see me again, bringing a lot of bad news. The fact that I was arrested has been officially announced by the Austin Police Department's official Twitter. Although my real name was not mentioned, the media's sense of smell is extremely keen, and netizens' ability to eat melons is self-taught. In just 20 hours, the group has suffered huge losses, and it is said that my father is also very busy. Why didn't he call me to see me? I was furious, my handcuffed hands pounding heavily on the table. Lucas didn't dare to answer me, which made me even angrier. He wouldn't want to give up on me, would he? A tiger doesn't eat its cubs. Can he just watch me die? I raised my head, not wanting people to see the tears that were about to flow out. I just killed a few useless people. They actually want me to pay for it. Too much, right? Hello, Stirboshem. Lucas looked very disappointed when he heard this and wanted to turn around and leave, but he finally spoke. The police's evidence is not just that bottle of perfume. There are also those footprints. I currently understand that they have found the motive for the murder, time of the crime, modus operandi, physical evidence. The only thing missing is a witness. But Mook stopped talking, and I immediately understood that girl named Emily. No, she can't be a witness. She's a child. Her words have no legal effect. Lucas said, "Not Lucky, but William. The video you recorded when you were interrogating him that day has legal effect, and there is a sentence in it. It's you. I recognize you. It's you." I looked at Lucas in surprise. He asked, puzzled, "So when you stimulated him to hurt you at that time, did you not think that he would say this sentence?" He carefully observed my expression, tentatively asked, "Could it be that you knew his sense of smell was extraordinary at that time, and deliberately went out to spray perfume so that he could recognize you?" Talk. I raised my head, closed my eyes, my thoughts swirling in my mind. No, this is not enough to convict William as dead. Even if the video recorded him directly saying that I am the real murderer, it cannot form a closed loop of evidence. As long as the lawyer is good, it may not be without a chance of winning. Lucas nodded, "But you ignore the power of public opinion. Now this matter has aroused public outrage. No one dares to bend the law for personal gain. Besides, can you really make sure that you have not left any evidence?" Lucas said with some hatred, "You talked too much with Ellen." Really? In addition, the blind smart glasses were only in the functional testing stage. At that time, and many functions were not perfect. Now the entire research project has been suspended as the no living product. You didn't have the heart to destroy it, right? No one can guarantee that its memory function cannot be restored. If anyone breaks through, all your cover-up will be useless. I lowered my head. My hands couldn't help but insert into my hair. The police took the thing away. Of course. Lucas lowered his voice and said, "So, the chairman means killing to uphold justice." Thinking of this, I couldn't help but laugh, as expected of a man who started from scratch and made his way through the business world in order to protect his interests. What is his daughter? How much is she worth? Lucas said, "The result of everyone's discussion is delay. First of all, you have to actively cooperate with the investigation, show a clear conscience, and reverse the public impression. Let the public opinion calm down first, and ensure the interests of the group." Sure enough, no matter what happens, interests always come first. I pleaded, "I want to see my dad. Let him come here to see. I have something to say to him." "That's not possible." Lucas immediately refused. "The chairman only asked me to bring you a message. Deny it to the death." The brain diary Williams video and the usage records of the blind smart glasses. Eventually, the inconspicuous pieces of evidence gradually surfaced. Next, I faced rounds of increasingly intense interrogations. I had simulated countless times the scene of being intensely interrogated, and I thought that with my professionalism, I could handle it. But I underestimated the detective ability of the criminal police and the psychological attacks of the profilers. They can infer and analyze a lot of information from a single sentence I say, and I have to be very careful with my words. In the end, I could only remain silent. But Alan was right. Silence could not stop the investigation of the case. As long as the usage records of the blind smart glasses were restored, it could be proved that every time the case occurred, this glasses was at the scene. Coupled with the previous evidence, it could form a closed loop of evidence chain. At that time, even if I denied it, it would be useless, and it might even aggravate the sentence because of my refusal to plead guilty. At this moment, the words leniency for confession severity for resistance, on the wall of the interrogation room became particularly conspicuous. The profiler told me that this case was premeditated and organized crime with cruel means, many victims, and coercion and inducement of the blind to take the blame, and the circumstances were particularly serious. If my attitude continued to be so tough, I would most likely be sentenced to death in the first instance. But if I had a good attitude of pleading guilty, what I said to Alan before could be regarded as a voluntary confession. At least I could get a suspended sentence, so that there might be a turning point. Because Alan was the victim of the poisoning case, and he was deliberately stimulated by me. That time his body probably hasn't recovered, so he didn't participate in the subsequent interrogation, and I haven't seen him for a long time. I thought for a moment and said, I want to see Officer Allen. I just want to tell him. Seeing Alan again, it has been a while since I was formally arrested. His body has probably recovered. Wearing a police uniform, he is tall and handsome, righteous, as if all the advantages of men in the world are gathered in him, which makes my heart flutter. He didn't seem to want to see me, and naturally didn't give me a good look, and asked coldly, "What do you want to say? Will it be on record?" "Of course." "Then I won't say it," I said, confidently. "I know you are trying to break through my psychological defense line, but unfortunately, there are some things you don't know, and the people who know won't tell you. Only I know best where my heart is the weakest. Don't you want to hear it?" Alan thought for a moment, took off his earphones, and all the equipment in the interrogation room was turned off. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. After all his days of being monitored, I'm going crazy. "Have you seen my dad?" Alan nodded, and I asked again, "What did he tell you?" He said, "He was very disappointed in you. He said he would fully cooperate with our investigation." At this time, Alan also specifically emphasized, "Because of you, the business empire your father worked so hard to build is on the verge of collapse. He seems to have no energy and no ability to save you. So pleading guilty is my best option right now, right?" I'm not reconciled, and I'm not convinced. I tugged at the corner of my lips dryly and smiled. Everyone knows that my father went from a poor boy to a prominent business tycoon in the city, but few people know who my mother is. Alan asked in surprise, "Isn't your mother Mrs. Elizabeth Everett, Elizabeth Kennedy, the former daughter of the Kennedy family?" "See, de Fiv, your father is indeed a business prodigy, but if he hadn't married the daughter of the Kennedy family, I'm afraid the Everett group wouldn't have developed so fast." "That's what outsiders know," I explained. "The man who single-handedly boosted Austin's economy in your eyes is actually just a heartless man who abandoned his wife and daughter. My biological mother is just the poor woman who shared his hardships before he made his fortune." Then I told the love story of my parents. Charles Everett, a household name on the rich list. He was originally just a young man from the Missouri countryside who was unwilling to be controlled by poverty. With the stubbornness of never giving up until he reached his goal, he made his mark in the city of Austin. But what really changed his fate was that he received financial support from the Kennedy family during his most difficult time. Ironically, the way he got this funding was by hooking up with the Kennedy family's daughter. Ironically, the reason why he was able to win the favor of the Kennedy family's daughter was because he gave her a special birthday present, a handmade lace wedding dress. The wedding dress was amazing at first glance because of its excellent material, beautiful and generous design, and unparalleled craftsmanship. The daughter of the Kennedy family loved it so much that she fell in love with my father at first sight. Even more ironically, this wedding dress was painstakingly made by my mother, and for this, she even lost her eyesight and became blind. Hearing this, Alan seemed to have a little compassion in his eyes. So you know Braille. So you want to study blind smart glasses. Everyone has a motive for everything they do. Every action of every person, in terms of behavioral science, is explainable. Except for me, no one would mention my mother again. Thinking of this poor and pathetic woman, I am the only one who feels sorry for her and sheds tears for her. At that time, my dad lied to her and said that after he finished the business, he would take her to the city. My mother waited and looked forward to it until her belly grew bigger and the child was born. But she didn't wait for my dad to come back. Until I was 4 years old, my stepmother came to our barren countryside. At that time, I was ignorant. I just thought she was so beautiful, like a fairy from the sky. But it was this fairy, after talking with my mother died, so my stepmother took me to Austin. She taught me, cultivated me, she dressed me in beautiful dresses, took me to brightly lit places, let me enjoy the envious eyes of others, and made me the eldest lady of the Everett family. In that extravagant environment, I gradually forgot my past, and I thought I was a princess born with a silver spoon in my mouth, feeling that I had everything. But fate did not treat me so kindly. When I was 11 years old, my stepmother became pregnant with my younger brother. Everyone didn't know much about the young master of the Everett family, because as the son of a rich man, he was protected all the time, and I became a target. Before I entered the police academy, I was kidnapped 3 times, each time tortured, but no police came to rescue me. Do you know why? Alan looked at me suspiciously. Your father didn't call the police. Rich people don't believe in the police. They believe in money to solve everything. Since then, this concept has also been ingrained in my mind that money can buy everything. Suddenly, I walked up to Alan, knelt down beside him, with my legs bent. Alan, I know I was wrong. Please save me. Save me. I grabbed his trousers tightly, with both hands begging bitterly. I don't want to be sentenced to death. Please save me. Alan was obviously frightened by my behavior. His body may be able to nimbly dodge the bullet shot suddenly from the opposite side, but he couldn't avoid a woman's kneeling. He almost tripped over the chair he was sitting on when he got up. He was so flustered that he didn't know what to do. He shouted, Vivian, what are you doing? I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have played with you in life, and I started learning Braille when I was very young, and our company also makes a lot of products to make life easier for the blind. It's just that I suffered too much when I was a child. My psychology is dark and unhealthy, so I did these crazy things. I was just confused for a while. Alan looked at me at this moment. His eyes did not have a trace of sympathy, only disbelief, disgust, and even hatred. Alan, you know what? Since my stepmother got pregnant, she has given all her energy and love to her own child, ignoring me. She didn't hit me, didn't scold me, and didn't abuse me even more, but her cold violence towards me left a huge shadow in my own mind. My dad is busy with business every day. He has no time to care about me at all. Even if I am kidnapped, it is his assistant who pays the ransom. In the eyes of outsiders, and a shying daughter, but only I know that I am just an unloved orphan. I live in darkness and coldness every day. My world has no light, no warmth. Until I met you, the scene of you wearing a white t-shirt, jumping and shooting on the basketball court, the passionate youth radiating from you, your smile, your vitality, lit a lamp in my darkness. I thought I saw the light. I summoned up great courage to confess to you. I thought I would fall into the sweet world of love from now on, but you poured cold water on me. Alan had already dodged away from me. Early on, I knelt and crawled to him, raised my head, and pleaded, Alan, I really love you. I can do such a thing. You also need to be responsible. Please, please have mercy on me. As long as you are in court, change your testimony a little bit. Maybe I will be given a suspended sentence. Then I will have a chance to live. As I was talking, Alan shook his head. His expression was so tangled that I couldn't describe it in words for a while. Didn't you often say that the duty of the police is to protect the safety of every citizen? I am also a citizen. Please protect me once, okay? But no matter how much I begged, he remained unmoved. I could only say, Alan, believe me, money can solve many things. The people I killed, even if they work hard for a year, they can't earn 100. 000. Working from morning till night can only make them go to the most common public elementary school to study the contribution they have made to society together. Is not as good as what I said casually. We can't just look at the murder itself, but also whether the value of human life is worth it, right? Instantly, Alan shouted angrily, Vivian, do you know how crazy what you just said is? Shh. I hugged his legs tightly, shaking my head desperately. This is the truth of the world. Your set is wrong. If you don't believe me, we can ask the public for their opinions. Use the lives of 11 useless people in exchange for the light of blind people all over the world. Is it worth it? Fun. You can also ask the families of those victims. If I pay $10 million for each life, let's see if they're willing or not. Shh. Before he could answer, I asked and answered myself. They will definitely agree. Those drug testers who work for a reward of tens of thousands of dollars don't know how happy they are in their hearts. They don't have to do anything. Just take some medicine, record some drug reactions. You can earn a high salary. If you are unfortunate enough to die, you will be compensated 1 million. Jan, they are very happy. I just missed the process of asking if they would like to. Otherwise, they wouldn't even resist when I killed them. Isn't that the case with William? A mere 50,000 is enough to make him willing to take the blame. Even if he recognizes me at the last moment, he doesn't dare to say that I am the real murderer, but just use the suicide tool prepared in advance to kill me. Actually, he knew he couldn't kill me. He was asking for death, wasn't he? They all know that their lives are worthless, and they are all willing to sacrifice their lives for money. My only mistake was doing it myself. It can only be said that I am too dedicated, and I want to benefit the blind people all over the world too much. At this moment, Alan kicked me hard, and my body flew out from under his feet instantly. He was so angry, but he trembled. "You are so disgusting. I am ashamed to know someone like you. I am saddened to be human with you. Don't worry. I will definitely fight for justice in court, then have you sentenced to death. I will definitely witness the whole process of your execution with my own eyes. You are not worthy of being a human being, let alone living." After speaking, he slammed the door and left. I think he must regret listening to me. I raised my hand and wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth, wiped the tears from my face, and ended my performance. At this point, how can I be the only one suffering? Everyone has to be unhappy. About 2 or 3 months later, my case finally went to trial. It is said that I have aroused public outrage. Because of my identity, I successfully united countless people at the bottom of the society. They jointly called on Twitter to have the court sentence me to death. They proposed that I should endure all the pain endured by those who died. Some even went to incite the families of the victims to make trouble at the gate of the court in an organized and premeditated manner. Those old people with gray hair who lost their children, those children who lost their parents and didn't know where the future was, they vented their hatred towards me to the media cameras. Even people with disabilities have united to seek attention. The voice of public opinion is really loud, but can it affect the outcome of the verdict? When I was escorted into the courtroom, countless people crowded there to throw rotten eggs and tomatoes at me. They called me pervert, murderer, social scum. Countless media workers swarmed in with their cameras, eager to capture my fearful, panicked, and remorseful expression. But I disappointed them greatly. My expression was too indifferent, so indifferent that I felt that they were just a bunch of ants, and I would not feel any guilt, even if I trampled them all to death. They are the scum of society, okay? Their existence is of no use to me. They have no wisdom, no ability, and they don't even think. They are just cold steel machines with some bad emotions. They seem to be outraged and indignant for those irrelevant people and things, but in fact, they are just working hard to earn a meager salary to support their families. If I threw some dollars here at this time, they would definitely scramble and loot like zombies. The prosecutor has sufficient evidence, and the lawyer is not bad, but Lucas is not a vegetarian either, and his defense is very exciting. However, my emotions were not very stable, so I answered several times. I insisted on my point of view, using the lives of 11 worthless people in exchange for the light of thousands of blind people in the world. I think it is worth it. You can't just see my mistakes but not my merits. Lucas hurriedly reminded me, "Don't talk." The prosecutor immediately asked me, "You mean you admit that you killed those 10 innocent residents?" The blind William was also forced to take the blame, and he was even under your elaborate design. Attacked you and was shot dead on the spot. Xian. It was only then that I realized my slip of the tongue and quickly defended myself. I didn't say that. I didn't admit it. Lucas shouted at me again. "Shut up." He looked as nervous as if he was facing thousands of troops at this time. He hurriedly said to the judge, "My client, who has been pampered since she was a child and has never suffered any hardships, has been detained for so long. It is inevitable that she will be emotionally unstable and her mind will not be clear. Her words have no legal effect at this time. I apply for a temporary adjournment of the court session and wait for my client to be emotionally stable before starting the trial again." Lucas's strategies seemed to be to push me into the category of mental illness, but I was not willing. Once this setting was established, my life would be ruined. I didn't kill anyone. I was wronged. In court I insist on this point, but it's no use. The final result of the first instance was sentenced to death, deprived of political rights for life and additional civil compensation. At that time, my legs really went weak. At that moment, when I thought that I would be tied to the execution bed and then slowly wait for the arrival of death, all the cells in my body were protesting. However, this verdict is really heartwarming. Because this case made them prove one thing: everyone is equal before the law. It's a pity that they didn't rejoice for long. Just when the police were about to take me away from the court, the audience suddenly commotion. They took out their mobile phones to watch and discuss, and then their eyes involuntarily turned to me. Lucas also panicked, quickly took out his mobile phone to look at it, and his face became even more embarrassed. Alan in the crowd also seemed to have received some information. His face was very bad. He glared at me with unknown meaning. And outside, it's even more chaotic. So I had to be taken away from the side door of the court. Later, I heard that Twitter was down. Since the beginning of the Twitter era, the hottest headline appeared: Charles Everett, chairman of Everett Group, confessed. Duration 5 minutes. My father, in his 50s, sat tiredly in front of the camera along with renowned reporter Ben Holloway. Ben Holloway asked, "Mr. Everett, as the most outstanding entrepreneur in our city, what do you think about your beloved daughter killing someone?" "My daughter has been well behaved and sensible since she was a child, and her grades in all subjects are very good. She has never worried me in terms of study or life, especially when she told me that she was going to the police academy and wanted to be a policeman in the future. I was sincerely proud of her." Ben Holloway continued, "You mean you don't believe your daughter would kill?" Yes. My daughter would not kill," Dad said very definitely, "because I killed all those people." Suddenly the reporter in the picture was so surprised that his glasses almost fell off, and he wanted to stop the interview for a while. It's a pity that this is a live broadcast, and the number of people watching this live video has skyrocketed. Ben Holloway bit the bullet and asked, "Are you kidding me?" No, I even poisoned Officer Alan Blake, who was investigating this matter, in order to cover up the truth. Unfortunately, I made things worse. Not only did I fail, but I also made the police suspect my daughter. Just because she gave Officer Alan a bottle of water before he was poisoned, she became the prime suspect for poisoning. But in the end, there was no evidence to prove that my daughter did the poisoning case, because the poison was not put in the water at all, but on Emily's medical record book. I know that after the police investigated this girl, they will inevitably know that William was willing to take the blame in order to raise medical expenses for this girl. In order to stop the police investigation, I decided to poison the investigating officer before the police suspected me. In the video, there were countless curses. Dad still said, cordially, "My company has been researching blind smart glasses since 5 years ago, and I'm determined to hope that there will be a smart product that can replace the eyes of blind people and let them live in a bright world. Because I once let down a woman, she shed tears day and night for it and cried blindly. But when the product was successful, I experimented on myself first. Wearing it in a place without any light, I can move freely because it can accurately and quickly tell you the obstacles and road conditions around you, and through radio waves quickly let the user know this information, which can be synchronized with the reaction speed seen by the eyes of normal people. I am proud to be able to develop such a product. I hope it can enable blind people to do more, even more than normal people. I don't know why I want to verify this function by killing people anyway. I finally decided to do it. I was invited to give a report as to John's elementary school because I donated a library to them, and during this time, I accidentally met the victim. Ben Holloway was so surprised that he couldn't describe it. At this time, he stammered and asked killing someone to verify the function of the product. Yes. At this time, Dad raised his head that had been hanging down. I think it's a drop in the bucket compared to the price I paid for developing this product by exchanging a few lives for the light of blind people all over the world. I used to be poor. I know the pain of being penniless. I think as long as the compensation is in place, no matter whether it is themselves or their family members, they will be willing. But today, when my daughter is about to be sentenced, I suddenly feel the pain of losing my loved one. I deeply know that in the hearts of the families of the victims, no amount of money can compare to the life of their loved one. I killed not only one fresh life after another, but also personally shattered one warm family after another. I'm sorry. Dad stood up and bowed to the camera. Here, I express my sincerest apologies to the families of the victims. At the same time, I also apologize to all the people who are concerned about this matter. I also want to apologize to my daughter. She was originally a very good policeman, but she lost her job because of me, and she was imprisoned because of me, and she almost died for me. Speaking of this, Dad burst into tears. I know my regret now is of no avail. I ruined 10 originally happy families. I let a blind man who has been tortured by fate suffer again. Huge pain. I am to blame for my death. I am willing to accept the trial of the law and the condemnation of the people, to comfort the souls of the dead, and to return justice to the society. He said, I have handed over the relevant evidence to the police station, and I will actively cooperate with the police investigation to calm the matter down as soon as possible. This matter, I also want to tell everyone that everyone is equal before the law. No matter when and where, life is supreme, and all living beings are equal. Our world will never judge the value of human life based on wealth or poverty, and will never measure the length of life by value. If I could throw rotten eggs at the screen, I think he would be buried directly, saving even the coffin. The evidence provided by Charles is very comprehensive. The perfume was a luxury I bought, but he had access to it too. The shoe print in the sewer happened to be his size, and at his current weight, it was exactly the depth the police had collected that day. When the murderer killed, in addition to using local materials as murder weapons, he also wore a voice changer and other auxiliary tools, such as shoe covers, gloves, wigs, etc. He also provided clothes stained with the blood of the victims. And the most powerful evidence is that after the technicians spent a lot of effort to restore the data in the blind smart glasses, there is a sentence said by Charles, "The blind people in the world will remember your merits today." Every piece of it is solid evidence. These things almost overturned all the evidence and testimony of the police in the past. The police mentioned what William said during the interrogation and mentioned the death of Lucky. Charles completely denied this. He said, "I just designed William to take the blame. I promised him that as long as he's willing to take the blame, I will pay for the girl's medical expenses. The rest is made up by himself. Since Lucky has been dead for too long, William's neighbors only know that Lucky is dead, but they don't know the specific circumstances of Lucky's death." Later, the police went to the girl named Emily again. Although they learned something, what the child said could not be used as court testimony. It is said that Emily would often tell William about school, so the police speculated that William knew that his fate could not be changed. So he wanted to use this incident to do something for the disabled animal protectors, teachers, etc. in the world. He hopes that a society can give more care and help to the disabled, more understanding and support to animal protectors, and more respect and awe to teachers, and don't let the teaching profession become a low-level profession that everyone despises. As for Alan's poisoning case, the evidence is even more conclusive. Putting all the things together, Charles really looks more like the real culprit. But there is a big doubt. Why did you use your daughter's perfume and leave evidence? For this question, Charles sighed 3 times in a row and said, "Because my daughter thinks I don't love her, and I don't want my daughter to know that I love her either. After she became an adult, I would not participate in her. I will know everything about her. What kind of perfume she likes, what kind of man she admires. That's not her perfume. It's the one I bought on purpose to understand my daughter's hobbies. But you can't find my purchase records, because I asked someone else to buy it. After all, it's Lady's perfume." The police were also skeptical about William's ability to recognize people by smell, and they asked me if William's sense of smell is superior to ordinary people. If you sprayed perfume when you saw William, he would immediately recognize you. But why did he wait until you finished the interrogation, left the interrogation room, and came back before he could recognize you by the smell of perfume? Why did you go out to spray perfume halfway through? I said, "I didn't go out to spray perfume. I just went to ask other colleagues if they knew about William's past. The surveillance video of the police station that day can prove it. However, some places in the police station are not covered by surveillance, and no one knows how William recognized me, except himself. In view of the presumption of innocence rule, they could not continue to detain me based on this. Then Lucas followed normal procedures to pick me up from the detention center. After all, no matter how much I said, it would not have any legal effect. Before leaving, I met with my dad, and we didn't say anything, but it seemed like we said a lot. It's just that at that moment, I realized for the first time that he was old. He had everything, but when he was old, he was no different from other men. He is no longer the man who always wears suits and works meticulously. He is just a dying old man. He seems to be longing for something, but I can't give him what he wants. After all, just like when I was a child, when I looked at him with longing eyes, his first reaction was always to avoid my eyes. When Lucas picked me up from the detention center, all the policemen from the Austin Police Department were standing outside. They looked at me with extremely angry and unwilling eyes. Among them, Alan's face was the ugliest. I walked up to him and said, "Alan, what I said to you was just to stimulate you. I really hate that you don't even want to look at me. Actually, I'm not. I have a venomous heart. and just a filial piety. Studying blind smart glasses is my filial piety to my deceased mother, and not telling the truth is my filial piety to my biological father. I asked provocatively, isn't filial piety passed down by our ancestors from generation to generation? Isn't this a good tradition? Isn't it also the light of justice that you promote in your house? My words could always make Alan furious, but he had to restrain himself because of his status as a policeman. He said, "My eyes will always be on you, even if it takes my whole life. I will bring you to justice." "I know," I said with a smile. "You said that I get you in disguise. You will pay attention to me all your life, right? Even at the moment of your death, you will never forget that you have been in your life. Have you ever met a woman named Vivian Everett?" Alan's face instantly turned the color of pig liver. If he was carrying a gun at this time, he would definitely shoot me directly right. I deliberately provoked him and said, "Don't worry, I will definitely try to be happy, and I will never let the haze atmosphere of this time envelop me all the time." He rarely uttered an extremely dirty word, but it was very soft. As a people's policeman, how could he curse citizens? This is immoral behavior. The follow-up went very smoothly. The police investigation went very smoothly, and the prosecution went very smoothly. Charles was sentenced to death with a 1-year reprieve, deprivation of political rights for life, and additional civil compensation for the crimes of intentional homicide and poisoning. However, this verdict seemed to make the public very dissatisfied, so the Everett Group suffered a more severe boycott than before, and the entire group was in a mess, not to mention that it would go bankrupt immediately. So that night, my father committed suicide. He committed suicide by taking the same poison he used to poison Alan. The dose was too high, and the rescue was ineffective. I handled his funeral very calmly. The blind murder case and poisoning case came to an end with his death. But for me, the real test has just begun. Inheritance lawsuits have always been the biggest headache in the legal profession. Lucas had already prepared a lot of materials. He said to me, if the chairman did not leave a will, then his assets will be divided equally among his wife, you, and the young master. I flipped through the materials, casually looked at the cold words and figures, and said casually, "That's fair." However, according to the marriage law, half of the chairman's assets belong to his wife, so you can only get 1/3 of the half. The most troublesome thing is that because of the impact of this case, many people are boycotting the products of the Everett Group, and competitors are gearing up, wanting to replace them. And those shareholders of the group are all it's the master of seeing the wind and steering the rudder. Madame has never participated in the affairs of the group, and the young master is not yet an adult. I'm afraid you need to take care of the important affairs of the group. I just smiled faintly when I heard this, but Lucas became more anxious than me. "Miss Everett, if this matter is not handled properly, you will have nothing." With such public outrage, how can it be so easy to calm down? I closed the information in my hand. This hot potato, since someone wants to replace it, let them grab it. Lucas asked urgently, then the business empire that the chairman worked so hard to build will be destroyed. That's what I want it to be. I looked at Lucas with an innocent and simple face. He was obviously startled by my words. I smiled and said, "Mr. Ha. Field, you are also a learned person. You should know what is hitting a snake and hitting 7 inches, right? As long as we hold the core competitiveness in our hands, what we lost today will eventually return to our hands, right? Brittany. Lucas didn't speak, just nodded slightly. The most enjoyable thing for me was kicking people out of the Everett family mansion. My stepmother, formerly the eldest lady of the Kennedy family, now Mrs. Everett, was doted on by her parents when she was a daughter, infinitely cared for by her husband when she was a wife, and wholeheartedly devoted herself to her son when she became a mother. She seems to have nothing else to ask for. She just wants to wait for her son to grow up and inherit everything from the Everett group, as agreed with Charles before. Unfortunately, she underestimated me, what I can't get. No one else wants to get. Vivian, what are you doing? She, who has always been elegant and calm, rarely showed her emotions, pointed at my nose and cursed, "You pervert, you murderer, you unfilial thing, you ruined all the hard work your father has done in his life. Auntie, you are wrong. You ruined Dad's life's hard work. If it wasn't for your cold violence towards me and your 3 carefully planned kidnappings, there would be no Vivian today, and there will be no bitter fruit today. Everett Group has declared bankruptcy. All of Dad's assets will be used to pay off debts, and you mother and son will not get a penny. And this villa was an adult gift from Dad on my 18th birthday. It belongs to me, and now I'm going to kick you and your son out, right?" She almost vomited blood from anger, but my excellent younger brother, supporting his mother, didn't even dare to look at me. I reminded, by the way, everything in this house will be auctioned off by the court to pay off debts, so you two can't take anything away. I really want to know how people who have enjoyed wealth for most of their lives can gain a foothold in this world if they have nothing one day. Poverty and disease are the most durable people. I knew their end would be miserable. My stepmother would freeze to death on the street on a cold winter day. My younger brother will die of a venereal disease in his prime and die in pain. Shortly after, I reorganized a pharmaceutical company, but it was boycotted because I was leading it. I am very grateful that there are so many people in this world who uphold justice. However, this does not pose a threat to me. Who would pay attention to which company the medicine is from when they are sick and need medicine? What's more, these are all medical insurance drugs. Boycott me. Are those patients waiting to die? Or take those expensive medicines that are not subsidized by the state. As for the blind smart glasses, they are selling well all over the world. No one would think that they are eating human blood, steamed buns. They will only see the infinite benefits in the future, and will never pursue the ugliness and blood behind it. After a long time, no matter how sensational things are, they will eventually calm down, just like the most turbulent tide will eventually return to the coastline. On the 1st anniversary of my father's death, I went to the cemetery to pay homage to him. Here I met a man who said he was a clerk at Citibank. He told you that my dad would deposit a safe deposit box in the bank for me every year on my birthday. According to the agreement between them, 1 year after his death, if I went to the cemetery to pay homage, the bank would tell me about the existence of the safe deposit box. If the clerk didn't see me, those things would be destroyed. I'm curious, what exactly did he leave me? For this, I went to New York specifically to open those safe deposit boxes. Each safe deposit box contained some photos of me, with words written on the back. Vivian's first birthday. Vivian wears school uniform for the first time. Vivian put on the young pioneer's scarf for the first time. Vivian won the award photo in the mathematical Olympiad. My daughter is the best. For the first time, I found that my Vivian was already a big girl. The boy Vivian likes. Vivian's coming of age ceremony. Vivian's university. Vivian put on the police uniform for the first time. I am proud of my daughter. Vivian. Vivian. Every sentence of Vivian on the back of the photo was like a sharp knife, piercing my heart, so painful that I was suffocating. The last safe deposit box was deposited by him a few days before he surrendered to the camera. In addition to some photos of me, there was also a letter in it. I unfolded it and saw a poem written on it. Though nature is silent, it holds deep affection, as spring awakens after winter's rejection. A tapestry of colors, meticulously planned, awaits the first thunder, a new life at hand. At that moment, tears streamed down my face, and this sadness lingered for a long time. Lucas handed me a silk handkerchief and told me father's love is like a mountain. I hope Miss Everett will not let down the chairman's kindness, and I will also abide by the chairman's will and always guard Miss Everett. Ian Ellen Blake. The last time I saw Vivian was at her wedding with Lucas. That year we were 30 years old. In just 1 or 2 years, she inherited her father's business acumen and skills, made a splash in the business world, firmly grasped the core competitiveness of people's livelihood, won medical care, and won education both internally and externally. I also have to admit that she has done a lot to solve people's livelihood problems. When the public launched a huge boycott against her, she never defended herself in public, but worked silently, winning people's hearts little by little, winning over those partners or competitors in the mall. They held a wedding at the Century at the most appropriate time. When countless netizens saw their happy and beautiful wedding photos, I think most people have forgotten that 11 innocent citizens died tragically. After all, someone has already paid the price, and everyone doesn't seem to care whether he is the real culprit. The families of the victims received huge civil compensation. The parents who lost their children have the guarantee of their old age, and the young children who lost their parents have the escort of money. The deceased are dead, after all, and the living still need to live on. Vivian specially took Lucas to deliver the invitation in person, asking me to be there to witness their happiness. She seems to be using this way to tell me that there is no such thing as fairness in this world. This world is the survival of the fittest. Everyone in this world is busy for food, clothing, housing, and transportation. People in this world have no faith. If there is one belief, its name is money. They even came to toast me. Vivian said, "Alan, I really need your blessing, and I also hope that you can find a aligned partner. I wish you a happy and healthy life." This is a provocation, a serious provocation. Naturally, I won't give her a good face. I warned, "You better not make mistakes. No matter what aspect, don't give us another chance to take you to the interrogation room, because no one will take your place again. Take the blame with your own life." Vivian still said calmly, "Alan, the truth has come to light. Do you still stubbornly think that I killed those people? I can swear to God, if I kill someone, I will die. God will strike me with 5 funders, and I will die childless. I sneered, don't swear, casually. The result is not so difficult to wait for. Lucas couldn't listen anymore, pulled Vivian behind him, stood between us, and smoothed things over, and said, Officer Blake, today is our big day, so don't talk about these past events. If you have any doubts, we will cooperate with the investigation at any time. But if you say something specious, if we sue you for defamation, it will be enough for you to drink a pot. Whether it is the police, or lawyers, or ordinary people, we must be cautious in our words and deeds. I am really hateful in my heart. I hate that I can't bring the real murderer to justice. I hate that I can't return justice to the victim, and I can't let them rest in peace. Since then, I have never seen Vivian again. Most of her company's affairs were handled by Lucas on her behalf, and occasionally I would hear about her company's deeds. How much was donated for the flood? How much material was donated for the drought? How many ambulances and medical equipment were donated, etc. But I never saw her again. I was worried that she would abscond abroad, change her nationality, and transfer assets, etc. So I kept a close eye on her, but she didn't make any moves. At the end of the year, I casually found an excuse to visit their husband and wife, but I only saw Lucas. He told me that Vivian was not at home and he hadn't been able to contact her for a long time. You've known my wife for so many years. You know her personality. She always does what she wants. Her father can't control her, and I as a husband can't control her. He asked, curiously, Officer Blake, is there anything you want to do with her? Sylvain, there are still doubts about the case. I need to confirm with her. Is it you who have doubts in your heart, or is it procedurally determined that there are doubts in the case, and a new investigation is needed? Lucas said, with a smile, if it's the former, I can't help. But if it's the latter, as long as we receive a formal summons, I think she will definitely cooperate with the police investigation. But the case has been completely closed, and I can't find any excuse to investigate her again. Later, I went to their house several times, but I never saw Vivian. I asked, Lucas, is she missing? Why, we had dinner together yesterday. My wife just doesn't want to see you, Lucas asked, curiously. Officer Blake, it is said that my wife chased you for 10 years, and you never even looked at her. Now that she is married, you come to see her so often. Are you regretting it? Even though he taunted me so much, I still went to their house once a month. Although I never saw anyone every time, I still insisted, because I found that every time I went there, the lights outside their villa would flicker rhythmically at night. If translated using Morse code, it should be "save me." I went there for 2 years in a row, but I never brought up the doubts in my heart. I deliberately pretended to be confused. Later, because I solved several major cases, I was promoted by leaps and bounds. But I think I don't deserve such a high position, and I even think I don't deserve to be a policeman. Because I knew that someone might be in trouble, but I chose to stand by and watch, which violated my professional ethics as a police officer. I am very distressed and confused. I specifically went to find a mentor who led me when I first became a policeman, hoping that he could answer my doubts. I think I am guilty. The mentor enlightened me and said, you can't just see the loopholes that the law has been exploited, but ignore the power of the law itself. Since ancient times, there has never been any law that can control all people, and the law may not be able to bring every evil person to justice, but it can at least uphold justice for 99% of people. He asked me, Alan, how many saints do you think there are in this world? Counting the past and present China and foreign countries, it is also very few. Water is too clear to have fish, and people are too observant to have followers. We cannot use the standards of saints to demand ourselves, let alone use the standards of saints to demand others. The reason why the profession of police is sacred and great is not because we fight wits and courage against evil and shed blood and sweat on the front line, but because we bear the pain and torture of fighting against evil every day, but being unable to get rid of it. It's a good thing to have ideals, but we have to admit that the power of an individual is mega, and our enemy is not only evil, but also our inner desire. We have to accept our powerlessness. The world will never change qualitatively because of any one person. We can only gradually influence this world. It's like there will be shadows under the sun. I remember then repeated that sentence, there will be shadows under the sun. I thought I understood, but in fact, I don't understand. After all, I still resigned from that position and chose to go to Mexico to be an undercover policeman. I know my strength is meager, but as long as I live for a day, I will fight against evil to the end. I am willing to use my nigger power to mediate in the sea of darkness, hoping that one day the red sun will hang high above and evil will have nowhere to hide. In that beautiful mansion, there is a hidden basement. At this time, the woman was tied to the execution bed, while at the other end, the man was adjusting the dose of the injection. This is a tool specially used to deal with death row prisoners, and Lucas spent a lot of effort to get it. The woman's mouth was covered with tape. Even if she struggled to shout, she couldn't make a lot of noise. She has forgotten how long she has been imprisoned here, but she can clearly remember the sins she has suffered. Every time she escaped, the man would take something from her. Hair, nails, teeth, fingers, toes, eyes, ears, etc., as long as they can be removed, but will not cause her body to be overwhelmed and die. He will remove them all without mercy. She is not afraid of death at all. She even yearns for death, rather than living such a life. But she was still unwilling in her heart, unwilling to let everything she had worked so hard to obtain be easily taken away by this man. You don't have to shout. He won't come to save you. You think I don't understand Morse code? You think he came here every month for those 2 years? For what? Read. Lydian, this is what you deserve. You personally shattered the light of a righteous policeman. You made a policeman who hates evil give up his inner persistence. He won't come again. I heard that he rejected a higher position, resigned, and left Austin forever. The woman who was still trying to struggle finally stopped struggling, but panted heavily. The man seemed to have pressed some mechanism, and she could see with her own eyes the potion in the syringe flowing into her body little by little through the transparent tube. Lucas tore off the tape from her mouth. I heard that death row prisoners have a lot to say before they die. Vivian, do you have anything to say now? I really want to hear it. That's why I kept your tongue. Vivian opened the remaining eye, looked at him contemptuously and hatefully, and said coldly, "You will get retribution." I don't know if I will get retribution, but now is the time for you to bear the retribution, Lucas said righteously. Now I sentence you to death in the name of the law, to comfort the 11 innocent lives in heaven. I want to return justice to them, and I want to tell them that even if the law cannot avenge them, I will use my own way to make the murderer bear the responsibility she should bear." Vivian laughed dryly. "You just want to plot my property. Don't make it sound so high-sounding. I can assure you that even if I die, even if you inherit all my property in the name of my husband, with your ability, you can't keep the wealth at all. Sooner or later, everything you have done to me will be exposed. You will also be tied to the death penalty bed and witness your own death." Vivian regretted it, blaming herself for not being cruel enough. She was actually moved to tears. Because of those few photos, her emotions collapsed, and Lucas took advantage of it. "I killed a murderer. Who will punish me?" Lucas became emotional because he knew that even at this moment, Vivian still looked down on him. After being imprisoned for so long, being tortured so cruelly, she never said a word of begging for mercy. He often thought that as long as this woman said she loved him, even if she was lying to him, he would soften his heart. But the potion had slowly entered her body, but facing death, she was still unyielding, and did not show the fear and panic he wanted. Soon she fell into a drowsy state. She murmured, "I didn't kill anyone." She called out, in a daze, "Alan, if only I could see you again. It would be nice to die at his hands." During the days of imprisonment, she often fantasized about this. "Do you know why Alan doesn't love you?" Lucas suddenly pulled her up violently and shook her vigorously. But she had fallen into chaos. He screamed, "Don't die. I regret it. I don't allow you to die now." However, Vivian's consciousness had already blocked everything from the outside world. As early as when she designed all of this, she had already thought about the scene before her death, but she didn't expect it to be so torturous. She didn't kill anyone. The shoe print can be left by a woman wearing men's shoes, or by a thin old man, or by a weak boy. The real perfect crime does not require hands-on. She has never felt fatherly love. How could she believe that her father, who doesn't love her, would take the blame for her? It is necessary to drag her half-brother on it. Such a child who was carefully raised by his parents, who received elite education since childhood, is just waiting to inherit the huge and heavy country when he grows up. He can't make mistakes. He can't make a single mistake. His father disciplines him with majesty. His mother puts pressure on him with love. Who would have thought that there is such darkness behind such a perfect child? With a little provocation, he is the best killing tool. Only in this way can she ensure that her father will come out to take the blame. The only thing she killed herself was the dog named Lucky. In that park, as long as she heard William shout, the little white female dog would happily run to his side. The two of them, one man and one dog, bathed in the sun, feeling that the whole world belonged to them. At that moment, she suddenly wanted to kill that dog, using the cruelest method she could think of. After all, even dogs have people who love them, but she doesn't. Finally, at the last moment of her life, she no longer needs to be Vivian, who lives in the dark ice cave forever. In the next life, even being a dog will be happier than this life. Lucas looked at the woman who had been tortured beyond recognition. After confirming that she was really dead, his whole body seemed to have lost his energy. He sat powerlessly in the corner, looking at everything in the basement, feeling more and more chilly. He obviously still had a big move in his hand, but he didn't release it after all. "Vivian, do you know why Alan doesn't love you?" She should want to know the answer, right? even just to know the answer. She would beg him. Right. The former Everett group developed a car. They knew that the car had hidden dangers, but they still chose to let the car go on the market. In that year, how many families were broken up because of the quality of the car? William's parents died because of this. Lucas's parents also died because of this. The same goes for Alan's parents. The pity is that William and Alan may not know the truth, while Lucas, who has been lurking in the Everett group for many years, has investigated the matter very clearly. Human life is worthless in front of capital, and the amount of compensation after an accident is far less than the amount of optimizing automobile equipment. In the eyes of capitalists, it's not a person, it's just a number. Alan can still stick to this without knowing the truth, and can sit still in the face of beauty's temptation. And he, even though he knew that she was the daughter of his enemy, still fell in love with her. He thought that the moment Vivian died, he would have the pleasure of revenge. He would have the sense of accomplishment of seeking justice for countless people, but at this moment, he has nothing. He only felt sorry for being a human. People don't feel guilty for stepping on an ant, and Capel will never blame itself for a human life. The law can only protect 99% of people, and the remaining 1% is destined to become abandoned children. If you want to seek justice, you have to pick up the butcher knife and become a butcher. The wicked must be ground by the wicked. Fight evil with evil. Though illegal, it is happy.